welcome today. Great for everyone to be here today. My guest is Paul Cecala, who we actually have known each other for a really long time. And Paul just told me he just put a book together and he was actually planning this whole thing date-wise and everything. We met it last week, I guess it was the Parsippany Library. So, of course, what I have to do is I have to put the book up, take control of your job search. And the best part for me was I got it autographed. One and
Thank
only.
you. Thank you. Well, not the only. You have your copy, but there are about 50 copies out there signed at the moment. Of course, anybody else wants theirs signed, just let me know and be happy to do that too. I feel like such a
So,
celebrity.
well, you should be. You should definitely feel like a celebrity for sure. I think it's so important the things that you've been able to do. So what was the main impetus behind this book and that topic and how you laid it out?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question too. Um, I've been in the coaching industry and career development industry for almost 25 years. And over that time, I found that a lot of folks needed some handouts or some extra pieces of paper to go along with the things that I was talking to them to help them with their job search. And
Mhm.
so over that time, I've developed, 25, 30 different worksheets or handouts. And I took the 20 best of them and put them into the book. So it takes you from what do I want to be when I grow up, all the way through to how do I prepare my references for the reference call. And it's step by step actions that you can be taking in order so that you work your way through a job search from start to finish.
So what's been the feedback so far from the book?
Oh my gosh, it's been great. People are saying it's really practical, it's really tactical. It breaks things down into such small steps. I don't feel overwhelmed. I can actually do this stuff. And, I'm sure, as you know, with talking to a lot of your clients, uh, people find the job search process to be very
Mhm.
overwhelming. And this is a way to help them make it manageable, especially in terms of using project management principles as the process behind the job search.
So I know you and we actually have a lot in common besides this. You run a couple of networking groups, one right after the other. You do a weekly group in Morris County, PSG, and you're also doing your Monday group. I guess, is it the third Monday of the month?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so what's the difference between the two groups that you have, the PSG and the EIT?
Yes. So it's really interesting. They're basically two, maybe three different types of support or networking groups to help job seekers.
Hmm.
The least common is just a pure and simple therapeutic group, and I kind of stay away from them because I'm not qualified to lead it. But there's speaker groups, which there are many of them nationwide, if not worldwide. Here in New Jersey, we have a plethora of them. The one that you referenced that I run is the Professional Support Group of Morris County, but there are many, many others. I think you even have one at the Wayne Library, the Wayne Township Library, right? And in the speaker groups, an industry professional who's either a career coach, maybe an HR professional, maybe a recruiter, will come to the group and make a presentation on their latest, greatest, most important information related to current trends in the job search process. So
Hmm.
it's a great place for the attendees not only to network with other job seekers, but also to gain new information or knowledge on how the best practices, if you will, of job search. So that's Wednesday morning, the Professional Support
Hmm.
Group of Morris County. This group actually meets just on Zoom. And so anyone from anywhere can join us. It starts at 9:30 Eastern and goes till 11:30 Eastern. We will actually open the room at 8 a.m. Eastern. So for an hour and a half prior to the formal meeting, there's a lot of networking that takes place as well. The Executives in Job Transition, which is one of the other groups you mentioned, and I have three or four that I run that are similar to this.
Hmm.
They're more of a strategic accountability group. And so the way those function is everyone who's on the call that time gets 10 minutes of fame. And when it's your turn during
Okay.
10 minutes, I want you to tell us your 30-second introduction, a little bit of a update on what's going on in your job search, and then pose to us your greatest concern or question that's causing you to hold back in your search. What's the challenge preventing you from moving forward? The remainder of your 10 minutes, which should be 8 or more of those minutes, the remainder of your time is the entire group brainstorming together how to resolve your challenge so that when you leave there, you have enough information to move forward in the search. You know, people love both of them for different reasons and because of the different nature of the way they're set up. So I would encourage anyone who's a job seeker that you should attend, I think, one job seeker networking group per month, maybe two per month. You know, if you attend one a week, that's fine, but not more than that because they'll give you the help you need to move your job search forward, but that's not where the employers are, and that's not where the hiring managers are. And those are the people we need to talk to in order to move our job search forward and get hired, the hiring authorities.
So I definitely want to do some call outs. Last Thursday, we met in person and it was really, really great. I saw Michelle Daly there again. Was
Hi,
great.
Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
David, thank you.
Michelle
Oh,
Norton,
Michelle
yes.
Norton. Wow.
Um, and I think that was probably the best thing of all because I really, really missed the meeting in person. Terry Seaman, I bought the book. It's a very practical workbook.
Thank you, Terry. And
Uh,
that's from another career coach, and I really am humbled to hear that kind of praise from other coaches because who knows better the type of advice and guidance to give than another career coach. So thank you so much.
so Michelle asked this question in your group, the IT group, how many of those challenges get resolved that lead to landing? And I know that everyone has an opportunity to talk about different things. So you could probably better answer the question than me because I've only attended a few times.
Yeah, sure. Um, you know, it's hard to judge what specific piece of advice or what specific meeting is going to be the one that turns the corner for you and gets you the job. What I can tell you is that the accountability groups generally see, 15 to 20% of their members finding work within a couple of months. The speaker groups maybe take some 3 months instead of two for the same results. But what's important is that you attend and that you take that guidance and put it to use because you're really getting the best information you can get.
I think for me, one of the questions that comes up again and again is how do you do this? I know it's hard for me to do all these different networking groups. And it's a challenge. And I think I saw Layston the other night too. I don't know if she's still doing the young professionals group or not that you were working with her on.
She is, and we are doing. That's one of the other groups that I facilitate. It's called the Yo Joe Club for Young Job Seekers, and that group meets every 2 weeks. It's specifically designed for individuals who are under 30 years old and in
Mhm.
job search as a way for them to come together with other young people experiencing the same kinds of issues that they're experiencing and helping each other through this accountability group process to find employment. And it's
Now,
worked really well.
the EIT group is actually an online group, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Right now, all of the groups that I am associated with meet online. It's just simpler and easier for everybody not to have to travel.
Mhm.
But we do also, in many cases, have maybe a quarterly gathering where we'll invite everybody to come together in person just for that one time to get to know each other better.
And I know even the group that you mentioned in town, we actually went to Zoom because in the beginning People were still afraid to go in person, but we're going to be probably in the next couple of months or so going back to in person, because I think we've built enough interest in that. But I think for me, the challenge is prioritizing things. We've talked about this a lot. I
Yeah.
think for me, there's so much information out there, and working at Lee Act Harrison now, there's a whole different challenge to that, because a lot of the people that have just lost their jobs, they're kind of stuck.
Right. And many, many job seekers are, which is why, for $20, the book is a good option for you, because, one of the first things you'll see in there is the process, the Gantt chart that I use from project management. Here, I think it's worksheet number 2. Yeah, is the start of the Gantt chart for breaking it down into steps. And the first step that we always look at is, what do I want to be when I grow up? Right? What is my work purpose? And then you move into, well, now that I know what I want to do, where can I do that? So we talk about targeting your job search and identifying not only the broad categories, but also the individual companies within those categories, and prioritizing not only the categories, but the companies within them. So it gives us a real focused place to start the search. From there, we'll do a little bit of research, both on the industry and some of the organizations. And then we move into creating the branding materials that speak specifically to that target market. And when we move to the next target market, we're going to speak to, change our branding materials so it speaks to those individual target audience.
I know one of the challenges I have working with my Lee Act Harrison people is they don't really know, like you said, what they want to do when they grow up now. They're still associated with their job. So the first thing we talk about is the branding. Then we talk about finding target companies.
Mm-hmm.
And even more than that, the other challenge is the job title they had before may not be the job title they're looking for now. It may have evolved. And sometimes you just have to do the research, because skills may be transferable within different job titles. But if they don't know that, they're going to be stuck in that rut. And that's why it's so important to bring that out to them.
It's interesting you say that, because just this morning I was talking with a client who's from Connecticut, as a matter of fact. And, she was saying to me, I love event planning and I want to stay in the event planning industry. But I've done that mostly for nonprofits, and I don't know that I want to stay with nonprofits. And so I said, well, what about the education industry? And she had never considered that when you're looking at private schools or colleges and universities, that they do a tremendous amount of event planning through their philanthropic arms and their foundations. So it opened up a whole new opportunity for her that she hadn't considered. That's the value of taking a step back, no matter where you are in your career, and saying, am I going down the right path now or not? Do I need to make a major adjustment? Do I need to make a minor correction? And then how do I get to that new place that I decided I want to go? So that's why I always encourage people to start with, what do I want to be when I grow up? In fact, I'll even tell people, if you've been in job search for more than 6 or 7 months, you probably want to go back and take another look and see, have I changed in that last 6 months enough that maybe I need to make another minor correction?
And perfect example, I'm working with some at Lee Act Harrison, and they ask at Lee Act Harrison, they ask you, what is the job title you're looking for? It's part of the form that they fill out. And they fill out this form, and then it turns out what they're filling on the form is not what they want to do. So we'll actually go onto LinkedIn and we'll show them, well, this is the job title. And if it's not what you want, then let's look at other job titles and let's see if those align. And sometimes, again, it's an assumption that they're making based on their history.
That's why one of the exercises in that section of the book is to create a list of all of your life accomplishments. And in fact, the same woman this morning said, well, don't you mean my work accomplishments? I said, no, all of your life accomplishments, because there are things that you do outside of work that can have a major impact on what it is you really love to do. Another way of looking at it, I was talking with some folks last night in a class that I'm running, and the example was given that this client, in fact, she was a client of mine, but a friend of one of the others in the class, keeps talking about herself as an individual contributor, happens to be in data management, but
Hmm.
an individual contributor. And I want to move up to that leadership role, but I don't have leadership experience. And her friend said, well, wait a minute. Aren't you in charge of your community's little league that has 14 baseball fields, 300 or 400 teams, 6,000 youth and adults involved in it, and concession stands, and you organize the entire group to do all of those things and hire the umpires and have all of this time? Isn't that leadership skills to run that organization? And she never realized that, oh, wait, I can talk about that in a job interview. I do have the skills to take that step up from an individual contributor to a leader or a manager role.
And those are valid accomplishments too, because we always talk about accomplishments, and accomplishments can
Right.
be of all different types. It doesn't have to be at a job. It could be something else you're doing, but a lot of things are transferable, but people sell
Exactly.
themselves short.
All
And
the time.
I mean, and it's just, I don't know if people don't want to brag, or if people are afraid of coming across the wrong way, but if you don't do it, who else is going to?
Right. And that's important. Most people don't recognize that. We have to brag about ourselves. So one of the important exercises, actually, it's kind of a multi-part exercise in worksheet 1, and then again, and I think in worksheet 8 or 9, is creating your success stories. So in worksheet 1, we're creating the list of all the accomplishments. Then we take that list in worksheet 8 and look at how do we use those to make them stories that we can tell when we're networking or when we're interviewing. And actually, the result part of that story becomes the bullet that you put on your resume. So it's all building on each other step by step.
So this person here, some of us never had a career path, Jill of all trades, if you will, stuck at step one forever. So how, I mean, and I mean, is that a common thing that you find with some of your clients, that they're not really sure how to get going?
You know, yes, let me just say simply yes. It is something that is common. Um, that's why we need to take that look and identify, where do we want to go next? What do we see as our career path? And I'll use myself as the example here. I had done a 15-year career in corporate aviation at the beginning of my professional life.
Hmm.
And it ended as a vice president. I had worked my way up step to vice president of sales. But that career came to an end, and I needed to figure out, well, what's next? I knew at that time I wanted to get into higher education. I thought I wanted to be a professor, but I only had a bachelor's degree. So my first step, looking at the long term, right? My first step was, how can I get involved in that industry? What is there in my past that I can translate and transfer into higher education now? And then once I'm there, they'll pay for me to go get my master's degree so I can then qualify to be a professor, right? So where I qualified to get in, the transferable skills I had were in sales. And the best place for sales was one of two options: admissions or career services. In the process of looking for a job and figuring out where I wanted to go next, I fell in love with the job search process. So I went into career services. And about a year, I was a career services representative. Then I became the director of career services. And I did that at two different schools for about 6 or 8 years. Then I managed the adult continuing education program at another school. And so I had this step by step progression that took me to bigger and better places, all because I started with, this is the end goal I want. well, oh my God, I never got to that goal of being a professor. But I still had a progressively bigger, better, more responsible, higher paying career within that industry because as I went, I made the minor course corrections to get me where I needed to go.
It's interesting that you bring up the idea of teaching because at one point I did think about being an adjunct professor somewhere to help out. But of course, I also did not have a master's degree. So this became a little bit of a pivot for me to do some coaching and to do some training. It wasn't something that I actually envisioned doing because in 2019, I lost my job. But at
Mm-hmm.
that point, I said, this is not happening again. I'm not going to go. I'm not going through this. And of course, this is pre-pandemic. I'd done
Right.
my thing, and then I just started working around a little bit. And one thing led to another, as you know, because we've known each other for many, many, many years.
Yes.
And so I just started doing some coaching. Made myself available to do presentations, and one thing just led to another. And
Yes.
I think you never know where life is going to take you. So sure, but I just wanted to put this up from Linda Brubaker, who's one of my fellow LinkedIn rock stars. It's okay to keep exploring, continuing to learn, and trying to figure it out as you go. If you're looking for
Yes.
your next forever job, there's so many ways you can use past work and life experience. I mean, I started out back in the day. I was a newspaper reporter for many, many years.
Wait, Mr. Introvert?
I worked at the Bergen Record, which back then, and I actually was covering municipal meetings, and I was actually there. I'm going to date myself. I was there when Lennon was shot.
Wow.
So, but what happened after a while is I couldn't make it work. So I went back to school for a career change. Hardest thing
Mm-hmm.
I ever had to do is go into IT.
Yeah.
Never looked back though, but I just kept evolving. And even now, the writing and stuff I'm doing now, I use that every day for sure. I mean, not the same way. Yeah, I am an introvert. I totally am. When you asked me to come up on stage on Thursday, I was like, oh my God, I'm not prepared.
So you've mentioned Thursday a couple of times, and I just want to step back for a second and let everyone know. Thursday evening, I had a formal book launch party and book signing event at the Parsippany Township Public Library.
Right.
And a lot of great folks attended, and I'm so grateful for Ken, you stepping in there. I also want to go back for a second, though, to that comment that you put up a moment ago from, was it Linda Brubaker?
Yeah, I'll put the comment up again. This was Linda's comment again.
Yeah, because Linda, I love that you used that term, next forever job. As a coach, you and I know this. Unfortunately, so many people in the world today, especially people who are 50 plus and have been in the same job or the same company for 10, 15, 20 years, they don't recognize that according to staffing industry research, a typical career today will last just 10 years. 10 years. And a job will last 18 to 30 months. In fact, there's some new research coming out that says folks under 30 years old are kind of stretching it to be all of 12 months before they jump ship. So, any of us who are currently in job search that think we're going to have a forever job, we're thinking wrong. And we need to recognize that jobs today are going to only last about 2 years. Our career is going to last 10 years, and then we have to reinvent ourselves. And so we all need to become job search experts because we're going to be doing a hell of a lot of that over the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever time we have left till we want to retire.
So Michelle Daly, and she was there the other night too, of course, when we were at Parsippany. I kind of agree with her about this. Making sure the hiring manager can see it's relevant and relatable to you for you to be hired. I posted today about this. I applied for several consulting assignments in the last few months, got rejected for all, got ghosted. And I was more curious than anything else. And I think it's really hard to really stand out and for a hiring manager to understand whether it's on a piece of paper or a LinkedIn profile to really get a sense of how they can be, how they, why they would want to work with you. And I'm sure you work in different ways with how people can best promote themselves and how they can get them to put themselves in the best light.
In the book, I have an exercise for interviewing. It's a process. I call it the 4-step interview process.
Mm-hmm.
And the first step of that process is to ask the interviewer as quickly and as early as possible in the interview, what are the key duties and responsibilities for this position? And if you had to define your ideal candidate for that role, what would that person look like? What would be their qualities and characteristics? The goal in asking those questions right up front, and I mean, you answer the tell me about yourself question with your 2-minute pitch, and then you finish that with these questions, right? You're doing that because you want to get that hiring authority focused mentally on what is this job really all about? What's important to me as the hiring manager for this job? Now, as the candidate, once I've answered that, you now know what all the transferable skills you have are that fit this role, and you can speak directly to them. I'll tell you, Michelle, when I was interviewing for career services at the school, one of the things I said when they asked me, well, why do you think you're qualified to do this? You've been in aviation. What's that have to do with career services? I said, well, let me ask you, what is the most essential skill of that job? And they said, well, you have to get our graduates jobs. I said, right. And isn't that just a sales job? Isn't it my job to sell the employer on hiring this recent graduate? Oh, yeah, I guess it is. And isn't it my job to sell this recent graduate on taking this job that they maybe think is below them because it's too entry level, but it's their entrance into the field? Well, that's definitely true. So what you're telling me is your career services department is a sales department, and this is a sales job. I've got lots of sales experience. Look at my success in sales.
Mm-hmm.
You teach me your product, I will sell that product. So it's incumbent on us as candidates to identify what are those key skills, those key qualities that this employer needs, and then connecting the dots for them to show them how my skill set meets their needs.
Well, I remember the last job I had was at AMC Networks, which is like Breaking Bad and all those other things. And I had never gotten a job in entertainment before. I knew nothing about the industry. I didn't know about linear this and online this and all that. But I went for the interview and we talked about what are you looking for? And they're actually looking for someone to be a project manager. They honestly at the time weren't sure if they were going into agile or waterfall. So they basically needed someone who understood the methodology, had nothing to do with the industry. They said, you'll learn the industry later on. And that 3-month assignment actually became a 12-month assignment because I created a job for myself basically out of the fact that they didn't really know what they were looking for. So they trusted me and trusted others.
Exactly.
And when I went for the interview, they were asking me questions that had nothing to do with the industry. Nothing to do with the industry. Yep. And I was so afraid going in, but they asked me questions that resonated with me. And I think that makes an important thing. You know what your skills are. And I always say this all the time. You lose your job and not your experience.
Right. Exactly. That's a great saying, Ken. Then advice and guidance that people should really take to heart. Excellent.
So I'm just checking here that the chat, I know Brenda, I agree. Adjunct teaching roles don't pay as well as consulting. I found that out the hard way. For sure. I think, Michelle, my work purpose has evolved. I think my flexibility and ability to apply what I know and obtain knowledge and what I don't know is one of my greatest strengths. I think there is a method. I think there is a change now. It is okay to ask questions about things. It used to be when I was starting on the industry, you'd be afraid to ask a question. You'd be afraid at sometimes to really you know, not come across as someone who knows everything. And now it's a different method. It's different. If I don't know the answer now, I'm going to ask. I mean,
And,
obviously, I've looked. I mean, I'll look it up if I don't know the answer. But it's much different in a collaborative environment now.
and you mean in terms of once you're employed,
Yeah,
not because during the interview you absolutely need to be asking questions, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
But I agree with you that once you're employed, the atmosphere has changed to where asking questions or pulling in the expert because you can't be the expert in everything is the right process because collaboration is everything these days. Yeah, I agree.
And I think, one of the challenges that job seekers have, and I get this all the time, is they want to come across in a positive way. And yes, it's a conversation, but at the same time, they want to make sure that they're putting themselves in the best situation entirely.
Yes.
So sometimes it's trying to glean things past the job spec. Sometimes it's doing research. Sometimes it's a little thing like, depending on the person interviewing you, they have a different way of interviewing you. If I'm being interviewed by a 20 or 30 something and I'm at my age, it's a little different conversation than the other way. And it's understanding that there are different ways that they go about doing this.
I think there's two key points that you're bringing up there, Ken. First is I don't care how old you are. If you approach the other with respect, and I'll use inappropriate terms here, love and care, but take them for what they are. If you approach people, whether it's at work or other ways, with those three things, then you'll always get the same back and you'll be able to work well together. The other thing is, doesn't matter how old we are. We all have our expertise in whatever we have our expertise in. Let's utilize our strengths and build upon our weaknesses rather than saying, you're better or I'm better or you don't know what you're talking about, you're too young or you're too old, whatever. You know, we all have strengths. Let's find our own strengths and work with them. You happen to know that I'm a foster parent.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I have fostered boys for about 10 years now. We've adopted one. And, these kids come to us, all of them that we've taken are teenagers. They come to us very broken. They come to us with a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder on top of whatever other disorders, emotional conditions, or atypical brain functioning that they already have. Much of it because of their upbringing. But we approach them the same way that I'm saying here. You may be 10, 12, 15 years old, 50 years old. But I need to approach you with respect and speak to you at a level you understand, right? But still speak to you as an equal. And that respect will come back at least 100-fold.
Well, I think also, and this is another thing, we talk amongst ourselves. We all have kids, and our kids do not listen to us, but they listen to other people. Even
True,
if it's the same conversation.
true.
I've had so many people say to me, my son, my daughter won't listen to me, and then we'll talk about this, and then it's the same thing that they know from their parents, and it's just getting different information from a different place. And I think
Yes.
I don't know if you work with younger people and if it's the same sort of situation, but I get that all the time with people in my network.
Oh, absolutely. We never hear it from the person who's closest to us, whether it's your spouse, your significant other, your children, or your parents. We're not going to hear what they have to say because you don't know what you're talking about, right? But when someone outside of our family says the exact same thing, we hear it differently,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it becomes something that we can understand and pay attention to. And some of that may be just using the different words. Some of it may be just the different sound of the voice, truthfully. I mean, my husband tells me all the time, Paul, you just don't listen when I talk. I've already had this conversation with you 3 times. You know, no, you didn't. But the truth is, I hear him so much, it goes in one ear and out the other. Whereas when you say it, Ken, I'm really paying attention to it,
Hmm.
which goes to something else that I talk about in other presentations that I do, which is the best skill we can develop as a job seeker is to be a good listener.
Hmm.
The better we listen to the other person, the more we're going to be able to address their true concerns and show them how we can best solve their problems and be their knight in shining armor.
So just to let you know, Scott, I don't know if the fun fact, yes, I worked at the Record. I worked at the Record probably for about 10 years. Um, I wrote about things. I was a staff writer. One thing which I don't actually post on my LinkedIn profile, but I'll share it here now. I knew nothing. I used to pick the horse races at the Meadowlands as part of what I did. I had no idea how to pick horse races, but I was given that task, and I was called Pat Picker. Um, it was a pseudonym. So I would pick the horse races, would be in the paper, and I got letters from people telling me how great a job I did, even though I had no idea what I was doing. Talk about imposter syndrome, but it's one of those things that the writing back then, the experience back then at the Record is something. There was a camaraderie to it back then. Again, I'm going to date myself a little bit when they had the old printing presses and they had the fax machines, and you were actually coming back to the office for writing from a notepad and all that stuff. But it definitely is. I'm very proud of my age and my experience, and I think that's what I'm trying to get across here. You are who you are. I have so many people that are so afraid to put out there who they are.
Yes, that's so true. And I want you to think about that imposter syndrome a little bit too, because we see and hear that all the time. Last night in this class that I was doing, one of the participants just last year received his PhD in systems engineering on top of his electrical engineering bachelor's and master's, right? And he keeps saying, but all the jobs I see are looking for 5 to 8 years experience, and I've never worked at a company ever. I don't have any experience. And he doesn't recognize that, wait a minute, the 8 years it took to get that doctorate degree gives you a type and level of experience that many of your counterparts won't have, because you've had to actually work the process. You've had to develop the experiments, then work the experiments, put it into action. The research is hardcore experience of doing what your degree is in. And so we have to work with him on getting past that impact, or that thinking that he's an imposter, and show him that all of those projects, all of that research that you've done, hell, all of the classes that you've taught as a graduate student teacher, all play into you having a valued experience that is very different from maybe somebody who's grown up in the ranks working in the company. And together you can complement each other and make a great team.
So we have to definitely put out some more. Judy Chanowitz and I, we've known each other all throughout the years. And as an example here, your encouragement in my sessions gave her the opportunity to get free training for her Salesforce admin certification.
Yeah, Judy, thanks for coming on. I miss our visits and chats. We have to catch up very soon. Um, yeah, that's something that's one of the best kept secrets within the Department of Labor, whether it's the federal or state Department of Labor. The Every state has allocated to it from the federal government money
Mm-hmm.
that is set aside to retrain unemployed citizens in the skill they need to get a new job. Depending on where you're at, the amount of money that is available varies. In fact, even in New Jersey, some counties are reimbursing $4,000, some are reimbursing $5,000. I think New York State, the last I heard, was still around $3,000. Doesn't matter. The point is, I've identified that I'm missing this skill.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get this skill, I can get a job. So let's go to the state, get them to fund me taking training in that skill. And it's available to everyone. All you need to do is contact your one-stop career center here in New Jersey and some other parts of the country. They now call them America's Job Center.
Mm-hmm.
And every county in the country has a job center, whether it's a one-stop or America's Job Center. Every county has at least one, and you should go there and talk to those folks about how can I get access to this training. And you have to be unemployed to get the training, but it can be really, really great, valuable training, and it doesn't have to cost you a penny.
Well, that's how I got my product owner and Scrum certification, actually.
There you go.
I went there, I applied for it, got the grants, went to the classes. And again, it makes, you know what, on top of everything else, there's a certain camaraderie and networking when you go to these events, because I took the certification and I had people there, the people there were working. It wasn't just people that were not working. So you build those relationships and you never know where there's going to go.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. And, anytime you have the opportunity to meet people, you have the opportunity to develop a relationship, you have the opportunity to network, you have the opportunity to get access to the people that they know. We all know the story or the game, right? 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or 6 degrees of separation.
Right.
Literally, if anyone wants to meet the Pope, we've got probably another 5 years, and I can probably get you access to the Pope, because one of my uncles is a Monsignor in the Catholic Church and is well respected, right? So from him, I could get you to 2 or 3 other people who will ultimately get you to the Pope. Who do you know that knows the hiring manager where you want to work? I was working with a client 2 or 3 years ago who C-suite wanted to be the CEO of a wholesale construction products organization, building products company. And I said, gee, I know this person who's in that industry. Let me make the introduction.
Mm-hmm.
And so I introduced him to my friend. And that friend introduced him to another friend who introduced him to a CEO of a competitor, who introduced him to the chairman of the board of the company he wanted to work for. And within 5 or 6 weeks and kind of 1 or 2 conversations with each of those 5 people, he ended up interviewing for the position. Within 2 months, he was hired. He's been there now 3 years and loves it.
See, and that's why I always ask people when they connect with me to be as specific as possible. And I do
Yes.
this at LHH because someone that I was working with said, you know what, I want to apply at J&J, which is Johnson & Johnson, and I have no way to get in. So I said, I know someone who used to be a former career coach and was out of work, and he's actually a project manager at Johnson & Johnson. Let me make the introduction, and you guys can figure it out from there. He may not be the right person, but he's inside.
Right. Exactly. And you just never know where those inside conversations are going to lead. I talk quite often in my presentations, especially on networking, about how do people find jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And the New Jersey Department of Labor has said, and the statistics vary a little bit year to year, but essentially there are 4 primary ways people find jobs. Do an online job search, work with a recruiter, network into the position, or contact the employer directly. 10% of people find their job through an online job search. It's actually closer to 7% if you're outside technology. If you're in technology, it's usually closer to 12%. 15% of people found their job because they spoke to a recruiter. 35% of people found their job by networking, by talking to someone who knew someone who knew someone. And 40% of people found their job by literally identifying who the hiring manager is and finding a way to approach them directly and say, listen, I've got what you need. Let's talk. Right now, one of those four things doesn't fit with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the online job search. What's different about that? The other three all involve talking to people. So if you take nothing from our conversation today, except to get off your computer and get out there talking to people,
Mm-hmm.
that's the number one thing that will improve your job search success.
And I hope everyone after the call, look at the chat online, connect with people, mention that you're on the call, because you never know who knows whom.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So Paul, I want to thank you very much for the conversation today. I was happy to be there to support you on Thursday.
Thank you.
And we'll stay in touch for sure. I don't know if you're doing a book tour to all different parts of the country or not, or
I'm open to going wherever anyone wants me, and I'd be happy to go talk to any organization, whether it's in person or on Zoom. In fact, I'll be doing a LinkedIn Live from Des Moines, Iowa on June 3rd, where I have a small cluster of clients, and
okay.
they've all said, Paul, come out here and be with us. Let's do a LinkedIn Live, and we're going to put a small panel together, and then I'll do a book signing while I'm there. So I'm really excited and looking forward to that. Monday night, June 3rd in Des Moines, Iowa.
Well, let me know about it. So I want to thank you guys very much for attending. The next 2 weeks, my 200 and 200th first LinkedIn Lives before I decompress a bit. So I hope that you can all attend. Have a great day, everyone. And Paul, once again, thank you very much. Go ahead. The book.
It's available on Amazon. So $20 on Amazon, actually $19.95 will get you the book. Thank you so much, Ken. I am so grateful to have this opportunity. I'm so grateful for your friendship and all of your support. I look forward to keeping in touch.
All right, great. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, gang.
Bye.